on-ramps. All right, so unfortunately I can't be in school today, but I want to make a video to just show you a few examples that will definitely help you out with that Canvas quiz and getting ready for your test. So on my website, I uploaded a 4.2.1c. If y'all want to take a look at that worksheet, I'm just going to do a few examples to help you out. Okay, so I'm going to actually just start with number 1 here. First of all, let's read the directions. It says find all the solutions on the interval from 0 to 2 pi. Notice it doesn't actually equal 2 pi here. So we're not going to equal 2 pi. We can equal 0, just can't equal 2 pi. And come to think of it, I'm going to make sure my unit circle is available very close and nearby. So I'm going to just Google my unit circle. And all right, I have it right beside me. Perfect. Okay. Cool. So I just Googled a unit circle and there it is. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve, meaning I got to get sine of theta by itself. How would you do that? You should divide both sides by 2. So sine of theta equals -1/2. So we got to figure out where on the unit circle is sine, which remember is the y coordinate, -1/2. So I'm looking at my unit circle, the y coordinate, -1/2 at 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. So theta here equals 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. Okay, that's my answer. So these ones are kind of supposed to be basic. Like for example, this one, again, you're going to divide by 2. And where is cosine -√2 over 2? Again, use your unit circle, okay? Practice your unit circle, but hopefully you have it memorized by now. Cosine is the x-coordinate. The x-coordinate is -√2 over 2, 3 pi over 4, and 5 pi over 4. So our answers here are 3 pi over 4 and 5 pi over 4. Okay, let's kick it up a notch. Let's find a more difficult one. Here we go, number 15. Okay, on number 15, you have 2 sine x cosine x equals cosine x. What you should do on this problem is get everything to one side of the equation, meaning I'm going to subtract cosine x from both sides. So we get 2 sine x cosine x minus cosine x equals 0, because these will cancel. So we subtract cosine from both sides, and now we're left with this equation. What you want to do now is factor. We're going to do some factoring today. Factor what these two have in common. So what do they have in common? You should pull out a cosine x, and left is 2 sine x minus 1. And that's going to equal 0. So now, do you see how we had to factor the cosine x out? You're left with 2 sine x minus 1. And now we have 2 factors. You got to set each factor equal to 0. So we have cosine of x equals 0, because that's the first factor. And then 2 sine x minus 1 equals 0. Let's get sine of x by itself. So add 1 divided by 2. So it'll be sine of x equals 1/2. Okay, we're okay on that. You added 1 divided by 2. And now we got to figure out where's cosine 0 on the unit circle. I know that's going to be pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. So where the x-coordinate is 0, which is pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. So right here we've got, what do we say, pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. Those are a couple answers. But don't forget this answer over here. Where is sine 1/2? That's at pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6. Okay, so this one has a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 solutions. Make sure you have all 4 solutions. All right. Okay, let's move on to another one. I'm going to move on to the back side and look at 23. So look at 23. 23, they're using W, but that's just like theta or X. 23 is a quadratic. It's a trinomial. There are 3 pieces. So we're going to have to factor it like a normal quadratic. What that means is I'm going to put out my parentheses, and I'm going to think about what multiplies to get 2 sine squared. Well, that's got to be 2 sine of W and 1 sine of W. Because 2 times 1 is 2. Sine W times sine W is sine squared. Now, what multiplies to get 1? The only possibilities are 1 and 1. And because you notice they're both positive inside, they both have to be positive here. Now let's just double check it. 2 sine times 1 sine is 2 sine squared. 2 sine times 1 is 2 sine. 1 times sine is 1 sine. So 2 sine plus 1 sine is 3 sine. And then 1 times 1 is 1. So it works out, checks out. So now we've got our factors, set them equal to 0. Set each factor equal to 0, so it's 2 sine, that's my puppy in the back. He's gonna have to be patient. Sine W plus 1 equals 0. So we're gonna subtract 1, divide by 2, so sine equals negative a half. Hang on, Ruth. And sine equals negative 1. So figure out where the y coordinate is negative 1 and where the y coordinate is negative a half. So negative a half, that's going to be at 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. And then where sine is negative 1, that's at 3 pi over 2. Alrighty. So why don't you guys try, well, it looks like 24 is very similar. Try 24. Okay. And maybe try 26. Because you need to practice factoring. Ooh, actually, no, I gotta do 26. 26 is different. Look at 26. Okay, y'all try 24 for practice. But 26, okay, do you guys see how we have sine squared and then we have a cosine? Oh man, we don't like that. Like they need to be the same function, trig function, sine or cosine. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna be very creative here. For sine squared, I don't know if you remember the identity, sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. So how do I get sine squared by itself? Well, you're gonna subtract cosine squared. So sine squared equals 1 minus cosine squared. All right, get cosine squared on the other side. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna substitute. Wherever I see sine squared, I'm gonna put in 1 minus cosine squared. So it's 2 times 1 minus cosine squared theta plus 3 cosine theta minus 3 equals 0. So you see what I did there? I had to use the identity. And now you're going to distribute the 2, so it comes out to 2 minus 2 cosine squared theta plus 3 cosine theta minus 3 equals 0. And I just don't like the negative 2 cosine squared, so I'm going to put everything on the other side, but I can combine 2 minus 3 is negative 1, so 2 minus 3 is going to turn out to be just negative 1, so we have negative 1. But like I said, I'm going to throw everything on the other side to make it positive. 2 cosine squared theta, positive 2 cosine squared theta. That one would turn negative because I'm subtracting it, minus 3 cosine theta. And then I'm going to subtract a negative 1, so it becomes positive 1 equals 0. So you guys see I put this one on the other side, this one on the other side, and this one on the other side. Put all 3 pieces on the other side just to make this positive. I'd rather work with a positive cosine squared. And now we factor it. 2 cosine theta, and then cosine theta equals 0. Again, looks like a 1, so it's got to be 1 and 1. But you see how this one's a minus, so these have to both be negatives because a negative times a negative is positive. And there we have it. have it set each one equal to 0. I'm gonna like kind of go on to the next problem, but it's okay. 2 cosine theta minus 1 equals 0. So we're gonna have to add 1, divide by 2. So cosine is 1/2. And then cosine theta minus 1 equals 0. So cosine theta equals 1. Yeah, cosine theta equals, this is hard, equals 1. There we go. Where is the x 1/2? Oh, I know, pi over 3. And is it on the fourth quadrant? 5 pi over 3. Pi over 3. That's 3. And where's cosine 1? That's 0 and 2 pi. But remember, we couldn't equal 2 pi, so it's just going to be 0. And I'm going to try to box that. I can't box. There we go. There you have it. All right, so those are just a few examples. Double check my work. Let me know if I made any mistakes. And yeah, that's going to help you a lot for your Canvas quiz and probably good hints for your test.